Friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast episode. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and appreciate you dropping in here for a little listen. And you can tell from my raspy voice, it is spring on the farm. And so, is it a happy spring or not for you? And I'm not talking about pollen, y'all, but we're going to get into that in just a minute. Just want to remind everybody that this podcast is made possible by thegardenersworkshop.com, where you will find everything you need to grow cut flowers. Whether you're a home gardener, a budding flower farmer, or a seasoned flower farmer, we have you covered, from supplies to education to support. All right, friends. So, is it a happy spring or not for you? And I have to add that Tucker has brought the noisiest toy he owns into this room to mess with while I just hit the start button. So if you hear a crinkly noise, and it's even making other noises. So anyway, happy spring or not. Anybody else anxious? What makes me even more anxious is that this is the most anticipated season of the year by everyone. And what I mean is the people that matter to us the most, consumers, customers, right? They have high expectations, but the good news is they are ready to engage. This is the season where you want to strike early and get people on board as your customer, right? All of that for me kind of makes me anxious. Do we have flowers? Are you faced with heading to a farmer's market maybe, or to start a bouquet subscription because you thought you were going to have flowers this early, but you don't? There's a little bit of anxiety, wouldn't you say? But we'll talk about more about that on later. But I will be completely candid. You know, that's one thing you can count on when you come to Field and Garden is that I tell it all, right? So spring is an incredibly anxious time for me. It always has been. And I just want to run through the things that I'm anxious about. And because I will tell you that when I hear my friends say to me, oh my gosh, it's even worse for me. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm normal. This is the way it's supposed to be, right? So let's talk about some of the things that get me all tied up, get my britches in a knot, for lack of a better way to say that. So let's think about the weather. Holy cow, y'all. I mean, you can count on nothing anymore. And that's actually been happening for almost the last decade for me now. We used to go straight from a cold winter, deep winter, right into summer. I mean, that was classic Virginia. And there was real clear lines for my spring garden along with that. Well, now the waters are really muddied, right? Not only does winter not get as cold as it used to, as often as it used to, it still gets cold. But here's a perfect example. Do you know that I just discovered the other day that I have large containers right outside my back door, which is the shade garden. I have big containers that I do begonias in, those, I forget what you call them, they're angel something, really pretty loose begonias. Anyway, you know, they're tender annuals, right? And asparagus fern, which is like a houseplant type of fern. Both of them survived winter outdoors in my garden or in the containers. They died back, but they've resprouted. I mean, they're already growing. So the weather has become, I don't want to say a pain point, because I'm actually getting a better handle on it now that I now know to not anticipate any expectation. I just look at the weather app and figure out what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks or how we're going to handle it, right? Then we have, and I just saw some of these as I was out in my grow room, seed sowing misfires. Y'all, I want to say that even as I would consider myself a stellar seed starter, I mean, we have started over 100,000 seeds throughout a year for years now, which just means that we have made every mistake. We've had every kind of failure. We've just had so much experience just because of the volume that we actually start, that we've seen it all. And every single year, we have some kind of craziness. I mean, for instance, Bobo started all the zinnias, and 2/3 of them just popped beautifully. But there's 3 trays that you would think went along the same journey as the other 3, but they didn't, because they are not popping quite like the others did. So I want to also add, but the fact that it's 3 different colors says to me it's not really the seeds, 99% sure. It is the environment, whether they went on a different journey or they sat on a hot spot on the heat mat or a cold spot on the heat mat, or stuff just happened, y'all. And that makes me a little crazy because, and I'll tell you this, just a little side note. Let's just say that something doesn't germinate well on our first recipe. The first recipe is my first succession of warm season tender annuals. We don't stop and restart that. We know that we're going to be doing a second succession fairly soon, and we'll just get those when that comes around. Those are the kinds of little rabbit holes that derail your time, y'all, in a day. So seed sowing misfires is something that only makes me anxious because it happens, and I don't seem to ever know what happened. But I will tell you that, we start the same seeds here on my farm that you're starting at home. We literally send the list up to the warehouse. They send the packets home, and that's what we use. We track lot numbers, and 9 out of 10 times when we start that same one that's kind of like a puny starter this time, when we start it in 6 weeks, guess what? It seems to do just beautifully. I mean, Bobo and I just look at each other and scratch our head. Stuff happens, y'all. And you can get all caught up in trying to figure out exactly what it was, but we don't have time for that here on a production farm. Even though we're not in high production anymore, we still have lots to do every single day. And then there's always a shortage of enough hands. Even though on paper it looks like that Bobo and I and her helper, we only really farm 3 days a week, actually, this time, or 2 this time of the year, but we go to 3 when harvest season starts. There just never seems to be enough time in the day. And I know that that is directly related to prioritizing things, focusing, and just having systems. We are avid Monday, Thursday harvesters. We know that we're going to do that. We don't get started on any other job. We know that we have to do that, and that's always our most efficient part of our operation. It's the rest of the stuff that it's just really hard. Even now, y'all, 26, 27 years in, I still struggle with, in my mind, thinking, I really want to go do X, Y, Z, but I've got to go net that crop or we're going to lose it, or lose the opportunity to do that. So there's just always a shortage of hands, and I'm just preparing you that never ends. That's part of your skill. That's part of your management and prioritizing jobs and making streamlined work lists, and also empowering the people that work for you to be that very same way. That is not micromanaging. That is managing your people, helping equip them to be streamlined, to know what's, giving them what they need to do the job, and for them to know what they're supposed to do without question, right? And then, y'all, there is that sense of urgency. It's like, do you have enough flowers? Every job we're actually talking about, because I've always felt like, even though I come from a big entrepreneurial family, I've always felt like farming had even more stresses because of the urgency of everything. If you don't weed or do your hoeing today, those weeds will be so big in a week, you can't just hoe them, right? You miss your chance to do it efficiently and quickly and smartly. But I do know now, as the owner of a retail operation as well as a farm and a big online course platform, urgency does come in different doses, but every business faces those. And that's what's just really helped me coming out of farm and going into other types of business, has let me see that, you know what, y'all, for us as farmers, it is really about prioritizing, streamlining, simplifying, and just knowing what is really significant and needed, and stop stirring the mud up and making things cloudy. That's just the way it is to be an efficient business. I mean, what good are we to our people and to our customers if we can't deliver the end product? And sometimes the things that we get all tied up on really aren't even necessary. I didn't used to be able to say that like 10 years ago, y'all. So I'm just saying, step back, take off your glasses and wash them, clean them up, just like I'm doing. Okay, back to the list. So what else makes me anxious in spring? Actually, this is year-round in season. Netting. Y'all, netting is flower support netting, supporting your flowers to keep them from going down. Now, I lived through this fear just last night, y'all. We had a thunderstorm that was forecasted to roll through, which it came. And we just dropped over in my club membership. I do a master class every month, and this month's master class was on netting or flower support. You know, why do you do it? How do you do it? Showed videos of doing it and what happens when you don't do it. And I just want to say to all of my club members out there, I relived that fear that's in that master class last night, because oftentimes, as I mentioned in that class, the early spring crops that should be netted most often don't get netted around here because they get away from me. Right now, I have what's vulnerable: saponaria, agrostemma, bachelor buttons, larkspur, bupleurum. All of those just hit the ground running because they were fall planted, and they are tall and they are wispy. And I'm pleased to say they did not go down in the storm last night. But that is the urgency and my anxiousness. Actually, I'm going out this afternoon to do some netting because that is my anxious food this time of the year, is that these crazy storms, all it takes, y'all, is 5 minutes of torrential rain or even just hard rain, and it'll just lay them down. And there is no coming back from that. Not to mention, it's 10 times more work to stand them back up, and they're never as good if you can even save them. So netting. And then there is the other thing that I actually did yesterday. So this is mid-April when I am recording this. So we're right on the cusp of when our warm season stuff can come out. So yesterday was the first hot day we've had. I think it went up to like 85 degrees. And nights are still cool. We're still dipping down a little bit at nights, below 60. So I am just now bringing out my seedlings. First off, we're getting backed up indoors because we're starting so many warm season seeds. My grow room is on the verge of being full, like in no more can come in. So that makes me to want to move some of those seedlings outdoors. So I did that yesterday. I moved, I think I counted, it was like 5,000 seedlings outside. That's 50 trays of seeds outside. Most of them typically have 100 on each one. I moved them all out thinking, oh my gosh, the day is going to be so beautiful. My hardening off area is so amazing. Another thing I talked about in a master class, it just gives me peace of mind to be able to just to put my stuff out. Well, then about mid-afternoon is when I heard about that thunderstorm that was supposed to roll through last night. Well, it's not that my trays aren't protected by a roof, but it's an open carport, even though there is a windbreak around it. I wasn't about to leave, the lion's share of my first planting outdoors overnight. So took them out yesterday morning, which was a lot of fun. But then last night, right before we came in for the evening, I brought them all back in the building to this morning, get out there and put them all back out because I think they can stay out now for a while. In and out, which is, it's just the way that I'm set up. I have no greenhouses, right? My grow room can hold about 7,000 to 10,000 seedlings packed like sardines in there. But it is just so much easier, and it gives me great peace of mind to get my warm season tender annuals really, really well hardened off Warm season tender annuals really benefit from 7 to 14 days of hardening off, where that's not necessarily always the case with cool season hardy annuals. Heat is far more torturous to seedlings than cool to cold is. So it's that in and out, which just means it just takes time, but that's top priority. And I am just going to button this in right here. I can still remember two seasoned farmers that I can think of, Frank and Mike, that have been farming for decades and decades. Both of them talking about one of the most important jobs on the farm, just like managing your people is the boss should do the watering of the seedlings. That is not a job you pass off to somebody. Y'all, not only is that your total investment right there, but you have your finger on the ball. You know, oh my goodness, those are really getting big. We're going to have to really be planting those soon. Or, hey, what happened to that germination? Or, hey, we look at that gorgeousness. I need to take videos of that for social media. I mean, watering is not a job you pass off to a kid. Or really, I mean, I water. I have always watered our seedlings. I mean, if I go on vacation or something, obviously somebody is doing that. But that is a really important job. So watering is not a job to be passed off, just like, you know, assuming that your people actually know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. Checking back in with them on a regular basis to affirm them or to say, hey, no, let's look at it this way, or this is why we do it this way. All of that. Y'all, I'm just wrapping this up in a big ball. These are all the things that make me anxious. This is what's going on for me right now. And y'all, guess what? And then we have bed making and planting all those plants. Are you seeing how, you know, it's like how do you ever look at a quilt or a basket that's been woven by somebody and think, how do they make that all come together? Y'all, this is definitely an art, a skill. Just know that I'm just realizing now more than ever, I never took and gave enough time to some of these. I'm not saying you need to have a stringent system with no flexibility. I'm just saying you need to get your P's in a row, because now the real party's starting. You're still doing all those things, right? And so all of those things, you know, weather issues, seed sowing, needing more people, that sense of urgency, netting, and then seedlings that are being moved through my system. You know, with no greenhouse here, that doesn't mean, I think that greenhouse people face all of these same things too. That is not going to resolve your problem. There is no one thing to resolve any of our issues. It's learning to have a grip on it and being in control, which I know we all want to be farmers, right? We all want to be the fun part of this, but to be able to do it and continue to be successful, profitable, and to survive, you got to do this stuff, y'all, and get a grip on it. So then the bed making starts, which we've already, I'm happy to report, have the beds made for the very first majority of the very first succession of warm season tender annuals. And then after you get the beds made and shored up and ready, because you know what, we totally focus on bed making as in how are we going to tear it down as we're building it, and how are we going to maintain the pathway. That's all that's on my mind then. Then we have to start planting. And then guess what comes after planting, y'all? It all leads to more netting. Do you see where all this is going? It's like spring might be butterflies and hummingbirds to some people, but not to a flower farmer, right? So all of that leads to more netting. And then what is that? Then what else is starting to happen? Particularly if you're a cool flower grower, y'all, you should be harvesting flowers straight out of the gate. When we're still cool to cold at night, we are starting to harvest, you know, poppies and bachelor buttons and the annual baby's breath and cerinthy and, you know, just all agrostemma and all those great cool flowers. And if you haven't heard, we have a new course out that came out that Lane Angelo of my co-host on Seed Talk, it's called Cool Flowers, Seed to Harvest. And y'all, it is a deep video, image-rich dive on everything from cool flowers on individual flowers, starting from seed, growing it up, when to harvest it, and the cool flower concept. It's like the flower farmer, flower enthusiast deep dive on cool flowers. And of course, we'll put a link here in the show notes, but you can always find it over at thegardenersworkshop.com. So if you're following along with cool flowers, friends, and if you're a field grower like me, you should still be coming into blooms at this time of the year. That means you're worrying about the weather, you're sowing seeds, you never have enough help. There's always the sense of urgency. There's netting, and then there's seedlings in, seedlings out, based on your weather situation. And then we start bed making, planting, which all leads to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, harvesting. Are you guys up to all that? I just want to share that after all these years, not only do I need support, I thrive when I have support, meaning when I set up myself to be successful by leaning on mentors, other people, peers, and community. I can't tell you how it changes everything, y'all. You know how, the saying is, one of the things that I teach in flower farming school, it's like put 5% of your gross away every single month and just don't even touch it. Just squirrel it away. And then in 20 months, you have a whole month's revenue. The peace of mind that knowing that that somebody's got your back financially, that little reserve fund allows you to sleep at night. Well, there's the next step is to have that community to lean on, or your education. I personally have to have all of those things. I know that I need to be encouraged, supported, and I just basically need help. I just can't tell you how good it is when I make time to do those things, right? I'm just saying, and I guess what I really just want to point out is, we're all anxious in spring. I basically carry that anxiousness all through the season. Those are from my years of high production. It's not quite that way anymore. That's part of doing anything that relies on weather, on unpredictable things you have no actual control over. One of the things that I have just come to realize in farming and in my other part of my business is that I need constant encouragement, help, and support. It is different for different people at different stages, right? I just want to wrap this up where we have all of that available to you as flower farmers over at thegardenersworkshop.com. First off, if you want to embrace the most in-demand flower season of the year, spring, you need to be growing cool flowers. And that's even if you have hoop and greenhouses. Why would you not utilize your fields better for those things that are possible to grow outdoors, which is the cheapest real estate you've got to grow cut flowers? And that is with our new online course, Cool Flowers, Seed to Harvest. And you can actually get a sneak peek into that over on the sales page to one whole session, y'all, to see. We harvest in the field. We show you too early, too late to harvest, and the optimal time to harvest on, it's like 36 flowers. Check it out. Then I also have a private community, and that's the club. That's a membership. And you can go over to that sales page on thegardenersworkshop.com and see more about that. And friends, there's a master class that drops every month. I do a live Q&A in there answering the questions, and I do a private broadcast every month. And then, of course, there's the community of like-minded people. And I would love to have you in the club. And then thirdly, if you're ready to get down to business of flower farming, to learn how to prioritize, to seek out and find those things that affect your bottom line, what to grow and how to grow it, simplify, find customers, how to sell, conditioning and harvesting, the basic foundation pieces for you to build your business on. Flower Farming School Online, The Basics, is my course that will ground you. And all of that's over at thegardenersworkshop.com. And friends, what does all that do for you? Soothes your anxiousness. When I think, how much more anxious. Now that I know that anxious is okay because I've covered my bases, that's the bottom line. I've got my little 5%. I'm streamlining. Streamlining our processes. I'm empowering my employees to do the right job and to go how to adjust to the weather and how to just deal with all those urgencies. And what's the result of that is because of empowerment through encouragement and education and support of a community. All right, friends, I just want to say I love flower farming and I want to help you love it. And it is our job. It's our work. It's our career. It's the business that we're building. And I love building it with you. Till we meet again, friend. Ciao.